Wait a minute, now where's Austin?
He went to the little Wrangler's room.
Austin, are you in there? Austin?
You looking for me? Yeah.
There you are. Yeah. You son of a gun. How about a drink?
Oh, okay. Lady, sit down here on the sofa. Why don't you sit on down there? Atta girl.
You know, it's good to see the two of you boys together.
Well, it's great being together, partner. Certainly is.
Well, how about a slug of bourbon? Austin?
Fine.
Oh, Janet?
No, thanks, Mr. Furley. Cindy and I'll just have some of this wine here. It was real nice of you to bring it along. It looks like a great year.
Okay, here you go, Austin.
Thank you.
And one for our RF. And Jack?
Right here.
Slug of bourbon?
Oh, gee, I don't know.
Oh, come on, you little twerp. Well?
Okay, I'll try.
Thanks.
Three's Company 2.
Battle of the Network shows. Join Rick Brooks and Mike Kogel as they explore the TV of the 70s and 80s through hand-picked episodes of their favorite and not-so-favorite series.
Welcome to another Battle of the Network shows. I'm Mike. I'm here with Rick, and today we're going to be talking about classic 70s and 80s sitcom Three's Company. We're going to do something special and compare what we're going to call a Mr. Roper episode to a Mr. Furley episode. So 2 episodes for the price of 1.
Yeah, some people might define the show and eras by the roommates, but I like to think of it in terms of the Roper years and the Furley years.
Yeah. Basically, if you don't know Three's Company, I don't know how you don't, but the sitcom based on a British sitcom, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's about a guy, Jack Tripper, played by John Ritter, who is roommates with 2 women and has to, among other things, in order to appease the landlord, pretend that he's gay, at least around the landlord, Mr. Roper, to start with.
Right, because otherwise there'd be too much hanky-panky going on in there for Mr. Roper to allow that situation to exist.
Yeah, it would just be unsavory.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's basically a farce, but with the sort of sexual hijinks added to that.
Yes.
The 70s. Anything else we should say about it?
I think one of the ideas behind it was apparently, and I think Fred Silverman, the legendary programming executive, sort of had in mind the goal to create a show that did for sexuality what like All in the Family did for racism. So and bigotry in politics. The idea was sort of to push the envelope a little bit, and come up with something maybe a tad controversial, but sort of build a show around kind of being a little bit edgier, but using kind of like sexual mores and as the basis for it, rather than politics and ethnic issues.
Okay, and it's really kind of a little bit of a silly show in a way.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, and I think John Ritter is certainly the standout performer, and we'll talk more about that. And I guess at the time, Suzanne Summers was a breakout star.
Mm-hmm.
In the Roper era, we have Norman Fell as Mr. Roper.
Mm-hmm.
You also have his wife. What's the actress?
Audra Lindley.
Audra Lindley. And then when they left for their own show, the Ropers, they brought in legendary Don Knotts to play Mr. Furley.
Yes.
Who's single, thinks he's a sort of man about town, a swinging bachelor.
Lothario type.
Yeah.
Yes.
And of course he's Don Knotts.
Right. So yes, his self-delusion's a big part of the character. And he also, Jack continues the charade
right,
for the benefit of Mr. Furley, because they know Furley would also frown on that kind of arrangement.
Yeah. Or, like one thing I read suggested that not so much he would, but his brother Bart, who actually owns the building.
That's true. Like he's basically like a front man for Bart. He's kind of the man on the ground, but
yeah,
he defers to his brother on just about everything.
Yeah, and they have some friends. We didn't. Unfortunately, their Jack's buddy Larry, their neighbor, didn't show up in either episode. But
yeah, the quintessential neighbor / friend who like comes in at inconvenient times is Larry Dallas.
Yeah.
Anytime like another show sort of makes fun of that, they're basically making fun of the Larry's the prototype for that. Richard Klein is Larry.
Yeah.
Who's also fancies himself a swinger.
Right.
And like a real macho guy, and always has some kind of scheming
he's
going
like
on.
a used car, like literally a used car salesman, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I would have liked to see him, but these episodes turned out to be so entertaining then.
They did, yeah. I mean, the show was on for 8 years. It was a huge hit, most of its run, like a top 10 show, like one of the anchors for ABC for years, and did very well. As you mentioned, it spawned actually several spin-offs and has endured to this day, mostly in syndication.
Yeah.
And I watched it a lot growing up. I don't know how appropriate it was but I was pretty young, and I remember it being on all the time.
Yeah. Like, that's how I remember watching it. Fairly young, but also like reruns.
Yeah.
Never. I don't know if I ever watched it again. Like kind of like it is enough, like on ABC.
Yeah, stuff like Happy Days I would have been watching in prime time, but Three's Company I remember it being on like an ABC and like reruns being on like at the same time and like the earlier episodes, and it was on quite a bit. And it turns up all the time. It's usually on somewhere.
And I kind of remember it being like not entirely liking it. Certain things about it, like I feel like Larry and Furley and maybe even Mr. Roper, just something about them made me uncomfortable. Like in my memory, I don't know.
You and every single female in Santa Monica for about 8 years, but
right.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Which means that in a way that they were selling it, like certainly Larry being a creep.
Yeah.
Kind of a creep. He's not really a creep, is he?
He's not.
Like maybe a minor creep.
He's
a would-be creep.
This kind of ties into one of my sort of contrarian theories about the show, but he's all bark, no bite. When it comes down to it, like as much of like innuendo there is in the show, there's not a whole lot of action going on, and the characters themselves are always surprisingly prudish, especially today, as far as like actually what they're doing. They sort of like take offense at the suggestion that they're living as free-spirited as they sort of talk and act. Yeah. And I think Larry's actually a pretty good example of that. He's always on the make, but as far as what he's actually doing, I don't know.
Right. Is he just not succeeding, you think? Or
I think he's actually kind of surprisingly old-fashioned. I think even Larry, it seems like the roommates, I mean, like, I don't know, the show seems to have it both ways a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, they sort of imply that things are going, that certain things happen, but at the other time, like in, one of the episodes we watched, Chrissy is like offended that a guy is sort of like pawing at her and wants to come inside the apartment.
Yeah.
As if not just because of him. It's almost like they have this attitude like, well, sometimes it's okay, but they're far from the free swingers that the show sort of wants you to believe they are.
Yeah.
Or that like the Ropers would believe they are if if they didn't think Jack was gay.
Yeah. And certainly some of it seems like Jack, and probably all of them, like the farcical things that happen prevent what they want from happening to happen.
Right.
Like, that and one of the episodes we're talking about, like, that definitely happens. Like, other stuff going on ruins his potential night.
Right. But even then, I mean, like, when they're talking about, like, a night, they're often talking about just, like, they're not even talking about, I mean, I'm sure they're talking about something.
Yeah.
But they'll be talking about, like, having a couple evenings just alone in the apartment. They're not even talking about, like, having people spend the night over.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, you've got a guy, it's a relatively small apartment. They got 2 bedrooms. The girls share a bedroom. Jack's got his own bedroom. Yeah. They have 1 bathroom.
Right.
It would be very awkward to have people staying over in that environment. It's just not practical, really, for anybody.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really seem to bother them that much. I mean, so the suggestion is that they want people coming up to their place, but, just for a little while, which is enough time.
Yeah.
But still, it seems like it's a little bit different than what they might have you believe is going on.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Right. Now, Furley is a creep.
Yes.
But not successful in his adventures either.
No, it's kind of like he's harmless, I guess, is what you think about him.
Yeah, but he's really trying.
Yeah.
Like, he's taking Larry's thing to the next level.
Yeah, but I think if Furley actually succeeded, he probably wouldn't really know what to do. It's kind of like one of those things where, like, he would, like, faint if
Right.
somebody actually, like, showed him attention, like, kissed him or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh, and he'd, like,
Right.
he wouldn't, he'd just go crazy, he just wouldn't really be able to handle it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when I was a kid, actually what really annoyed me is, like, some of, like, the illogical things or some of the plot contrivances, like, things that I sort of sit back and enjoy for their own sake now.
Mm-hmm.
I get annoyed, like, why don't they just tell so-and-so that this, the misunderstandings would kind of bother me sometimes.
Yeah.
I'd sort of laugh at them, but it's just things that could be cleared up with, like, 1 5-second conversation that would go
Right.
on for 20 minutes. That would sort of annoy me.
Yeah.
But I still liked and enjoyed the show, especially kind of like in the early years and the middle years. Now, later on, I didn't like the show as much as the characters sort of matured a little bit, and they kind of moved away. But I guess they always had their again, like, talking about quintessential sitcom things, the misunderstanding, the misoverheard conversation.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, like, landlords or other people or the roommates, sitting with their ear against the door and hearing something they're not supposed to, hearing it out of context, jumping to conclusions, and then having a whole episode built around that.
Right.
And that's pretty much the heart of the show.
Yeah. And a lot of walking in and out of doors.
Yeah, and walking into doors sometimes.
Into doors,
in
yeah.
Jack Tripper's case and
Yeah.
pratfalls and
Right, because John Ritter was very gifted at all the physical comedy.
yeah, and the show was built around him. He was the first one they cast, and then the roommates were sort of not afterthoughts, but it was designed to be a vehicle for John Ritter,
Yeah.
and that was how it lasted throughout the entire show. And even in the very end, they continued Three's Company with a spinoff,
Right.
based around John Ritter, which probably to the detriment of the other characters in the show, like Joyce DeWitt as Janet was there the whole run, and
Yeah.
kind of became an afterthought there. But
Did Larry get a spinoff?
Larry didn't get a spinoff, no. I would have watched that show probably. Larry's probably better in small doses, to be
Probably.
honest.
Yeah.
But he's usually pretty funny. He had a lot of good takes where he would just, like, not actually look directly in the camera, but just sort of like just do something. A lot of times Larry would actually be sort of victims of things, and it seemed like crazy stuff would happen to Larry, and he would get himself into situations that Jack would have to help him get out of trouble
Yeah.
because of Larry's scheming and
Right.
ideas. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd say pretty much any goofy sitcom plot that you could think of, they did it on Three's Company at one point or another,
Right.
including one of the ones we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. Yeah. And Richard Klein talking about Larry for a lot for someone who's not in either episode, but
Yeah. He's still working.
yeah, I saw him in a movie recently on
really?
Netflix. Yeah, I forget the name of it.
It's Saving Private Ryan?
Yeah. Yeah, he was Private Ryan.
Okay. just a guess.
No, this is that Mike Birbiglia movie about improv.
Oh, okay.
He plays somebody's dad,
Oh, good.
and I kind of look. Is that Larry?
Yeah.
It was.
He's one of those beloved characters.
Yeah.
I think Three's Company. I don't know how many people today remember it, but it seems like of shows of that era, Three's Company it just became a cultural thing. I think a lot more people know that haven't necessarily seen it.
Yeah.
Than some of the other shows. Like some of the shows we cover on this podcast, people might know the title. I'll bet you that there's a lot of people that would see, oh, they're talking about Three's Company, and they would feel that they know Three's Company, even if they wouldn't remember the episodes. They just know the concept of it and the whole gimmick behind it.
Right. Yeah, I don't know if I could recount a specific episode other than the couple that I've seen for this.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, the whole concept and everything,
Yeah.
and certain, just basic characteristics and things. So I guess we should start with the Mr. Roper episode.
Yes, Stanley Roper and Helen Roper, the original landlords of the building. And the Roper episode we looked at was the first episode of season 2, Ground Rules.
Yeah.
And it aired September 13, 1977. Now, the show, I think season 1 was kind of a short season. It debuted like in a mid-season thing, so they didn't have that many episodes under their belt. But this was kind of a natural idea for a plot. What do you say for the show?
Yeah, it seems like it could have been. Yeah, definitely like an early episode. That makes sense. So the basic gist of it is like the roommates trying to set up rules so that they can have the place alone, either to themselves or with a date or something, because Jack showed up at home when he wasn't supposed to.
Yeah.
And Janet was with a guy, and and then they pretended he was her brother.
Yeah.
Because she figured the guy wouldn't dig her having a male roommate.
Yeah, and again, Janet was with a guy, but who knows what was going to happen? But they were they were just basically kind of just hanging out.
Right, but they had been on a date or something.
Yeah.
He was very well dressed in a tan suit.
Yeah, and I guess it's not like a dorm room, so they can't like just put a sock on the doorknob. I guess.
Right.
That doesn't occur to them.
No.
And it's there's 3 people living in that house, so
yeah,
you can see how this would be a problem. And when they actually try to talk about this situation, it becomes quickly clear because they're all calling, they're sort of explaining their social lives and what they have lined up, and each of them have like multiple dates lined up. It seems like, or
right,
not each of them, but
yeah. And they said the idea that they have to give 24 hours notice.
Yeah.
And so, like Jack and Chrissy start just calling out.
Right.
Like they fill up almost a whole week right away.
Yeah, exactly.
And then Janet, so she doesn't have a day. So really, this is not in the rules because they're talking about it in the morning. But they're like, well, you can have tonight.
Yeah.
Like, well, that's not 24 hours.
Yeah.
I know I'm questioning the logic already of
right.
of this scheme. But,
Yeah.
And so she's just going to say, I'm going to watch a Humphrey Bogart movie.
Yeah, which is a pretty cool idea, actually.
Yeah.
She said she's been dying to see it, but
Right, yeah.
poor Janet. I mean, the show never really sexualized Janet.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes they would give her a chance, but I mean,
Yeah.
she was clearly seen as the contrast to like the blonde
Right.
Chrissy.
Yeah.
And she was not seen as the desirable one by really anybody.
Yeah.
So I kind of felt bad for her.
Yeah.
that one that she's kind of, but she's okay with it.
Right. Now, I guess before they set those rules, Jack had been at the Regal Beagle, the hangout for them.
Yes. One of the great TV locations ever.
So would you call that like a bar and grill kind of place? I mean, it has a bar, but it seems like they eat there too.
Like a pub, I guess.
A pub, yeah.
Yeah, definitely like an Americanized version of a pub,
Yeah.
I guess. And not just because of the name, but yeah, they have food there. They've got tables and a bar, and it looks kind of, it's sort of like elegantly, it's got like a classy veneer to it.
Yeah, but they serve sandwiches, so.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they give Jack a tab for some reason.
Yeah.
I assume, I mean, there was another episode I watched, and it was the first Furley episode, and like them not having money to pay the rent was part of the story, and I feel like that must be a running thing on it too, that like them needing work or needing money or.
Especially Jack, it seemed
Yeah.
like. Because Janet I think, had the most stable one. She worked at a flower shop.
Okay.
She was like a florist, I think, pretty steadily.
Yeah.
And then Jack was the one that was kind of doing like odd jobs at the beginning, and then eventually he's an aspiring chef.
Yeah.
But he's going to school. He's like in cooking school, culinary school. So he was the one. It seemed like there was a lot of times scrambling. And yeah, you're right. They'd always be, which, there's 3 of them. It's probably not it's a great location, I guess, Santa Monica or whatever. But
Yeah.
It's kind of funny that the 3 of them wouldn't be able to make the rent a lot of times, despite having 3 incomes in there and sharing the place.
Yeah. So anyway, he goes to the Regal Beagle and meets a girl there named Veronica, which is pretty interesting because both episodes featured a Veronica.
That's true. Yes.
Both blonde, which is not traditional for Veronicas.
That's good point. Yes.
It kind of makes a date with her.
Mm-hmm.
And then right after they make these rules, like she calls and has to switch the date of the date, like the day of the date.
Yeah, she had another engagement, but it got switched. So
Yeah. So he asked Janet to switch days, and she won't do it because Jack had established that no changing.
exceptions. Yeah, no changes.
Right.
Got to stick to it. Yes, he was adamant about that.
Yeah. Clearly, once he becomes a chef and has his own restaurant, if his menu says no, no changes,
No substitution.
no substitutions. That's not.
Yeah.
Everyone will know within a few days.
There'll be some leeway with that.
You can substitute.
Yes.
Oh.
So he tells the girl. He basically tells the girl that's fine.
Yeah.
Without even before he asks Janet.
Right.
If he can have that
Yeah.
at the apartment.
And that's where that episode he keeps talking about, like, doesn't he say that, like, hang up, why do I keep lying?
Yeah.
Or something
yeah.
like that.
He's just got some shame with himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he has to go and just basically keep her at the Regal Beagle.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I could have gone to a movie or something, but he doesn't have any money.
Yeah, there's no suggestion of her place or anything.
Yeah.
So I don't know what her situation is.
And they're having wine and sandwiches.
Yeah.
You know,
Nice
a
combination.
meal of champions. Wine and sandwiches. Yeah, he, like, tries to entertain her with this weird thing where he has her, like, wind up his hand.
Yeah, he makes like a wind-up toy or something like that. I
Yeah.
can show you the magic toy or whatever.
Right. And kind of, like, moves his hand around and, like, fights his sandwich and
Yes.
stuff. And I like that was kind of odd, but then his sort of sheepish explanation, like, because the sandwich was, like, attacking me or something. You
Yeah,
know?
he was going after the sandwich, so I had to shoot it.
Yeah,
So
that's
he takes
right,
out a
yeah.
gun and
Yeah.
yeah. I mean,
I liked how Ritter played that.
I like Ritter and everything, and
Yeah.
I think he gets a little. I've seen him get a. Some people, he might not be for everybody. He's definitely trying pretty hard, but I think he's great, and I think he does like a little. He's very versatile, and he does a lot of little things.
Yeah.
That's kind of one thing I want to comment on. Like, if you watch the show, I mean, as silly as the show is, but they do a lot of stuff, and I don't know if it's just him or I think they had a guy, Dave Powers. You see his name on. He directed like a lot of the episodes. I don't know if he did this one or whatever, but I think this is the kind of thing that maybe you could chalk up to like a good director and stuff because there's all sorts of little bits of business they do.
Yeah.
Like, I like the fact that like earlier in this one, they'll do something like they'll be talking, and instead of just leaving the kitchen, as he leaves the kitchen with Janet behind him, he'll throw up like an apple core in the air, and Janet catches it, and Jack
Yeah.
goes out through the door. They just do little interesting things. I don't
Right.
think it's like trying to steal the scene. It's just little things they do,
Yeah.
little flourishes at the end of things, like little expressions and little extras they kind of
Right.
do.
Well, especially also, in both episodes, I noticed the two of them have like a natural kind of, I don't know, it just seemed real, like their
Jack and Janet?
yeah, their connection, like just, more grounded than the rest of the show is, just kind of the way
Definitely.
they relate to each other, and sometimes seem to, laugh at something somebody does or whatever, and that's nice. Also, so you have this book that you brought, what is it called?
Come and Knock on Our Door, Hers and Hers and His Guide to Three's Company by Chris Mann, Mann.
Yeah.
And it is an excellent book about the series.
So I was flipping through that, and they have these little, like, kind of sidebars, different actors talking about their characters or whatever. And there was something from John Ritter talking about how much he loved Mary Tyler Moore and Dick Van Dyke, and that a lot of his mannerisms he just stole straight from Dick Van Dyke.
Oh, that's interesting, yeah.
Because he noticed watching, like, the Dick Van Dyke show that, like, when there was a laugh, he would be doing little mannerisms and things during the laugh,
Yeah.
rather than just kind of standing there.
Right. I could see that,
Yeah.
yeah. Some of
And-
his, like, facial expressions, too. And,
Right, and of course he's has a similar physical capability.
yeah.
I
I don't think that's at all blasphemous to make that comparison.
No, and he told Dick Van Dyke,
Yeah.
thanked him, but just said, I ripped you off.
I mean, that kind of goes to another thing I like about the show that I think I was telling you this before, is that the characters react to each other. As goofy as these situations are, they actually react to each other. Like you said, they don't just stand there. Like, for example, like Chrissy and then later Cindy, who we'll see in the second episode, who's sort of succeeded Chrissy as the dumb blonde.
Yeah.
If one of them says something like that's sort of like brain dead, they'll do like little reactions, especially Jack. He'll just kind of like look quizzically and just, or if Chrissy says something and leaves the room, Jack will just kind of like shake it off and give a like little puzzled look, and they'll hold it for a beat or two. So they don't just move on for it. It has an impact. Or like one episode I saw recently, Cindy says something that like is totally goofy, and Jack does a double take and like waves a hand in her face, like, "Is anybody home?" You know, and and then he kind of turns back and like starts talking to Janet again, and just again little touches that indicate that the characters actually are paying attention to what the other is doing that I always enjoy.
Yeah. So should we maybe come back to Mr. Roper at the finish explaining the rules thing and stuff, and then we'll come back because but basically, so Jack has a conversation with Mr. Roper that we're going to come back to, but in it he finds out that Mr. Roper had gone up to the apartment and no one was there.
Yeah, he was going to fix the
meanwhile,
overflowing toilet.
Yeah, and also we had seen like Chrissy came home, Janet was there, and the sound on the TV was out, so she wasn't going to be able to watch the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they basically broke the rules and switched.
Right.
And Janet was going to go out and watch a movie, and so Chrissy came back with that date, the one you mentioned, and she just comes back, and then the guy's trying to, wants to come in, and she's shutting the door on his hand. Yeah. He's like reaching through like a monster or something. But so she comes back, but meanwhile, that was before she comes back with the guy. Jack had gone back with Veronica, and he went in the kitchen to get something for them to drink. And where did Veronica go? Did she go into?
She's freshen up.
Freshen up.
She went to the restroom to freshen up.
And so she's blonde. She and Chrissy are wearing the same color dress.
Yeah.
Jack has told the because I think Chrissy was at Regal Beagle the first time he met her, and he had lied using the same lie. Said Chrissy was his sister.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a whole bit. Both times they do that gag, like of the people saying, "Oh, I can see the resemblance."
Yeah, Jack had pretended to be Janet's sister
brother
at the beginning of the episode, or Janet's brother, yes.
Yeah. So, anyway, he comes out, sees Chrissy from behind, and leaps onto the couch on top of her.
Yeah, yells like, "Surprise!"
Yeah, just as Veronica's coming out of the bathroom.
Yeah.
And, she's aghast that he would be getting ready to make out with his own sister.
Yeah.
And calls him a sickie.
Yeah.
And then Janet shows up, and she's like, "Another one."
Yeah, and then because Janet trying to help out, makes a reference to being Jack's sister,
right? And she just leaves like, "You sickie, sickie," and then Jack calls out the door, "I'm not a sickie."
Yeah, I'm just a liar.
I'm just a liar. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's something that's sort of irritating in the sense that like he could have just said, "Look, you two are both blonde. You're wearing the same thing. I thought it was you." But he doesn't get that out. I mean, I guess they sort of, she's so, like, upset, like Veronica, that she just leaves and doesn't really give him a chance to explain. But
he's flustered.
Yeah.
It happens.
But now see, I find that whole thing about interesting because, again, you got to wonder that they haven't really thought this out before. And it's still early in the show, but so they've got characters pretending that they're sisters and brothers because clearly the girls, they assume, well, and the guy should, by Veronica's reaction, they all assume that like nobody would accept a platonic relationship, and that's the whole thing with the Ropers.
Right.
I mean, it seems kind of goofy now, and it seems like a little bit modern. I think maybe more people, but not everyone could accept that exists.
Yeah.
But they always have to do these schemes instead of just saying, "Oh, he's my roommate, but there's nothing between us." It's like, no, this is my brother.
Yeah.
And they do that a couple of times in this episode. Instead of just saying, "Hey, it's my roommate," they go through these like farcical charades to avoid just telling them the truth.
And like the Ropers being suspicious, I can see just because of their age, and this is just, 10 years after the sexual revolution or whatever. So, they're still old-fashioned, but they also know the sexual revolution has happened, so they assume nothing good is going on up there.
Right.
Unless Jack's gay, of course. But, and if it were before that, then just this situation wouldn't be it just wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's this weird mix of like casual attitudes, promiscuity, and like more conservative reactions. Because I would think because it seems like a lot of these situations, are like first date situations, are very early in the relationship. And it seems to me like that would be an easier time to just say, "Oh, it's my roommate."
Yeah.
And then, well, who cares, But whereas, maybe if you're seeing somebody kind of seriously, and then you bring them up to your apartment, and then if you haven't told them already, I mean, really. It seems like something you should say pretty early on, like, "Well, I live with somebody, but it's not." And then if it's your problem, if you can't accept that. But again, it's just kind of fascinating. Like the idea is that, like, well, of course you can't have a platonic relationship, although this this series pretty much proved for 8 years that I guess you can. Although occasionally there were times where they sort of hinted at something, but
yeah. And like Veronica even says, I've seen a lot of weird things.
Yeah.
But nothing like this or something.
She draws the line there.
Yeah. Everybody's got a line, right?
Yeah, apparently.
Yeah. So that's basically the end of the A story. Mm-hmm. So the B story is the Mr. Roper story.
Yes.
Which is really always the Mr. Roper.
It
the
is.
story of his life, right?
Yeah.
He just wants to do his job.
Mm-hmm.
And his wife wants to, have a good time with him.
Yeah.
She wants to be romantic.
Yes, and Stanley's...
He's got books to do. He's got plumbing to fix.
Yeah, he's got to do the books. He's got to... He comes up with excuses to avoid, being with her.
Yeah.
And that's definitely a common theme, and they established that earlier. They're at the Regal Beagle.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that kind of surprised me is how Jack is pretty open about flirting with women
right.
when the Ropers are right there in the bar, and he'll react to it, but it seems like he could save himself a lot of trouble just by hanging out in other bars because the Ropers are there all the time at the Regal Beagle.
Yeah.
And it's got to be incredibly inconvenient for Jack to try to meet girls.
Yeah.
With his roommate or his landlord right there.
Yeah.
Who thinks that he's gay.
Right, and he's got to put on a show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he does do that.
He does.
So that's another weird situation, but so I guess Stanley, sees Jack and decides to, just kind of chats him up a little bit. Yeah. He's had a few. He's
right.
Kind of confiding, and he's saying that Jack he's lucky because he can be pals with women.
Yeah.
He's not a regular guy like he is. And Jack doesn't quite get his meaning, so Stanley has to kind of elaborate. That when you're married, there's demands in your time. Your wife always wants you to do things.
Right. Yeah.
Like Jack, like what? He's like, well, like I think it's Jack the one that actually says like putting up shelves.
Right. Yeah.
Like, yeah, exactly. Like putting up shelves.
Right.
So then they have this conversation based around. He can put up a shelf.
Right.
He just doesn't put up as many shelves as maybe Helen would want him to.
Yeah, or maybe other guys might put up more shelves.
Yeah, and Jack understands this, and...
Right. You can't put up a shelf every night.
Yeah.
Right. Jack's like, that's a lot of shelves. And it's quite the metaphor.
Yeah. Yeah, so it is.
Yeah.
And... is there? I can't remember what goes on with them in the before the finale of the episode. Actually,
I don't think anything else.
Yeah,
happens.
I think they just go
because he stays there and gets hammered.
Yeah, he gets
enough
liquid courage to to surprise Helen later that night.
Right. Yeah, and there's a couple references to the Jack and Janet and Chrissy live in the apartment right above them. Above the Ropers. Mm-hmm. And there's they keep talking about the tank in their toilet is too high.
Yeah,
the water's too high.
Keeps getting too,
So that plays into the end too. So he comes home, a little tipsy there, and he decides he's ready to put up some shelves.
Yeah, a man's got to do what a man's got to do.
As he says, pulling off his robe to reveal his striped pajamas.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, Stanley! And she's excited now. So this episode and like more, and I watched actually the pilot recently.
Uh-huh.
When I was growing up, my impression was not so much that what was really going on with Roper. My impression was always like Roper was interested in women.
Yeah.
He didn't have any like anything physical. He just wasn't interested in his wife.
Right.
Because I focused on like the bickering aspect, the fact that they always argued.
Yeah.
Now apparently, in some of the episodes, make it more clear that the idea is that he's impotent.
Yeah.
And that kind of went over my head, I guess, a lot as a kid. But like in the pilot, she actually says something like he used the word up, and she's like, "Up is never isn't exactly your direction, Stanley." And it's like, oh, okay. So they were establishing that pretty early what the issue was with him.
Yeah.
And that's why he kind of fears her because I guess it's maybe a combination of just I never thought I thought maybe it was asexual or something. I don't know.
Right.
But it's just something I thought it was more like just animosity for his wife.
Right. Yeah. That's kind of what I thought. Or
because
just
the way they always talk to each other.
Or just that her desires are insatiable.
Yeah, and that it just turned him the other direction.
Yeah.
Like he just went the other way because he couldn't
this is just exhausting.
Possibly deal with it. Yeah.
Yeah. But then I had seen something, mentioning that at least the writers considered that
Yeah.
was a situation. Which,
I guess maybe that was obvious at the time, but
I don't know, but it doesn't seem like he is in this episode.
yeah. That's true.
But they're getting ready to, commence building, and the water starts dripping on them from the ceiling, and he realizes their tank is overflowed upstairs, and he wants to go fix it, but she doesn't care.
Yeah.
And it's the tank. It's not the bowl water. It's the tank water.
Yeah.
So it should be okay.
Right. Although it's pretty serious if it's dripping through the...
I know. That's it. He really should be fixing that right away.
Yeah, he should. He really should. Well, I guess in about 5 minutes or so, he'll be ready to... He can put on his clothes and go up there and take a look at it.
Right. If he takes them off, I don't know.
Right.
But what is his last line is something like, "Be gentle."
Yeah, be gentle with me. Yeah.
So, I don't... We did mention Norman Fell's name already, right? The great
yes.
Norman Fell.
Yeah, Norman Fell's, he's the man.
Character actor from movies and television.
Mm-hmm.
Was one of the original Ocean's 11.
Yeah, he played a lot of serious roles, actually. So this was kind of like a thing, like... I mean, this made him be like this real comedy figure, but...
Yeah.
He was in like Bullet and...
That's right, yeah.
All kind, like the 82nd Precinct TV show, and...
Yeah.
He always played like a lot of pretty cynical, hard-edged characters.
Yeah. But on this show, he did a lot of reactions.
Yeah.
The word I'm looking for. Certain amount of mugging.
Yes.
Yeah. Almost or directly to the camera.
Yeah. He didn't do one of his patented break the fourth wall by looking at the camera and smiling.
Yeah.
That's what we really love. He didn't do it in this episode, unfortunately. I'm not sure what point he actually started doing that, but it became sort of a trademark where he'd get off his zinger about Helen and then look to the camera and get this little self-satisfied smile. Which, I love that. I think that's one of the best parts of the series. Because there's no reason for him to do it, but...
Right. But he did arch a lot of eyebrows.
Yeah.
Did he do the hand gesture? Or
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Jack introduced Veronica as his friend to cover for the fact,
Yeah.
And yes, well, does she know you're? And then he does this, weird wrist
Right.
butterfly gesture, like with his fingers, and there's a lot of that. Like Roper's big on like these sort of mincing gestures that he expects from Jack, and Jack obliges a lot of times by doing that sort of thing and raising his voice a little bit.
You know what? This just came to me. I think when I was a kid, I just thought the Ropers were mean. And I think I didn't like them because of that.
Yeah.
They just seemed grumpy and mean. And,
yeah. Well, like...
And they are the antagonists for them sometimes. But
well, Stanley was kind of a fuddy-duddy. I mean, Helen was always one trying to talk him out of, like, going upstairs and, like, yelling at the kids for being too loud.
Yeah.
He always, called them the kids and stuff. And, like... And I guess, like, I think, like, if he would be on their case about the rent, she'd be more like, oh, Stanley, give them a... She'd be sort of, like, trying to calm him down. He was the one that was really, like, the hard guy.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
Right.
Ironically, he was the hard one of the two. But, she was always kind of trying to talk him out of being, like, even, really giving the kids a hard time.
Yeah. And then, of course, they got their own show, as we mentioned.
Yeah, the Ropers, which did not last, and it was kind of an ill-fated idea.
That was, like, 28 or so episodes, I think. I looked in your books. So.
Yeah, I believe that. It didn't last, and the story has it that Norman Fell didn't want to do it, but he was assured if the show didn't last a year, they could they'd bring it back. And they had one half season of 6 episodes and then a full second season. So since it lasted just over a season, I guess that was their excuse for not letting them back on Three's Company.
Yeah, because they realized they had lightning in a bottle.
Yeah, that's true. I mean,
I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I love the Ropers characters, and Helen actually, I found her as a pretty likable character.
Yeah.
But Stanley was always hilarious to me, and I liked that Roper character. But yeah, when you bring Don Knotts on, like, it's pretty much everything Don Knotts does is entertaining.
Right.
Every line he does, like his physical gestures, so they couldn't have done better as to get a replacement for the Ropers.
Yeah. I've maybe seen an episode of the Ropers, but did they flesh out the characters any on that to make them the leads. I mean, it's kind of a weird. When you think about it, the idea of them being the leads of a show is just odd.
It is. It seems like a total cash grab, really.
Yeah.
I mean, have a big hit show, and we got to spin somebody off. Who we're going to spin off?
Right.
Sadly, not Larry Dallas, but the Ropers. So I guess the premise was they made the Ropers more sympathetic characters. They were like the earthy ones, and they were like trying to fit in. And their uptight neighbors were like Jeffrey Tambor, and his family, and were like total snobs. And the idea was that Stanley was so crude that he had these conflicts with them, but they were sort of like blue collar, white collar kind of thing, I think, and they just didn't get along. And I think they argued less with each other, but the whole idea was like Stanley and Jeffrey Tambor were like the two antagonists on that, as opposed to, I think they toned down a lot of the bickering, the marital bickering when they did that.
Like a couple of years ago, I caught a little bit of an episode, and I mostly remember them having to get in a hot tub with Jeffrey Tambor. And it's just being an uncomfortable scene.
Yeah, I could see how that one would stick with you.
For Stanley, it was uncomfortable. I don't think Helen probably wasn't uncomfortable. And Jeffrey Tambor, I think it was his hot tub, so he was like lording over the hot tub.
Just like a status thing for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
or Stanley's more like a self-conscious kind of thing.
Sinking into the hot tub and
Well, I mean, and speaking of self-conscious and thing, that's kind of one of the whole recurrent themes of the show. You can argue about the term like homophobia and stuff, but anytime like there's a suggestion, like the landlords, especially like Roper and stuff, like they're appalled at the idea of like anybody thinking that one of them is gay. Mm-hmm. It's not so much, and actually Stanley's very indulgent, in his own way. He's like, oh, it's okay, Jack. And once he learns that Jack is gay in the pilot, he's got no problem with it. And then he gives this like cutesy facial expression and just this kind of smirk the whole time. That's pretty much how he sees the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I think the same way with Furley a little bit, but they're okay with it as long as nobody thinks that they are. I mean, that's the one thing. It's not so much that they're afraid of a gay person. They're afraid of somebody else thinking that they're gay.
Yeah, definitely not of today, or an acceptable sort of thing. I mean, like Seinfeld had that famous episode where they sort of took it to that idea to the next, or maybe a more complicated version of it. But
now
where that fear was there, but they were also kind of making fun of that fear.
Well, here's the way I look at it. It's like if it's kind of, and we sort of see like similar situations. It's almost like the whole sister thing. Like, I'm not so afraid of being gay because in itself, it's like I'd be afraid of being considered gay if I was trying to get with a woman. I would be afraid of somebody telling her that I was gay.
Right, because that would affect your chances.
Yeah, and that's what goes on a lot because like Jack finds himself in these situations where, he's got to try to play both sides, and that's kind of a difficult situation. But it's kind of like in any walk. It's like I would be afraid of somebody thinking that my platonic friend is my sister and thinking that I'm trying to have sex with her.
Right.
Quite frankly, I would not want that to happen.
Right.
Because it's embarrassing and because people would think that something's going on. It would be a misrepresentation of me.
Yeah.
And more importantly, it would hurt my chances of being with another woman.
Right. Yeah.
With Roper and Furley, though, it's just kind of like they just don't like the idea. It makes them totally uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like they probably have views about like conversion and all that kind of thing and trying to recruit and that sort of thing is probably in the back of their mind. But overall, though, they seem to have a fairly good relationship, and sometimes they're actually amused. Like they don't want details, but they're amused by the fact that they think is Jack, as far as they know, is gay.
Right.
They mock it, of course, but
If Mr. Roper doesn't want hanky-panky going on up there, I mean, isn't it still going on?
Right. It'd just be not all the time.
All the time.
I think it comes down to
he
the
doesn't
idea of
want
like,
that
because
apartment.
they live together.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't occur to him really, I guess, that they would have dates up there.
Yeah.
It occurs to them that like they're just living together, so how could they keep their hands off each other?
Right. And one day they're not going to be at that apartment anymore, and he doesn't want to have to take down all those shelves.
That's right.
If all they're doing is making shelves.
Yeah. That's a good point. Now, I would be interested, though, like, what does Mr. Roper think about them bringing up dates to the apartment all the time? I mean, it's probably come up sometimes, but I think he does get, like, a little, like, I wonder what's going on up there. When they're having parties or something like that, he's wondering, and it's kind of like, it seems a little bit like maybe he's a little jealous and stuff, too, but, I don't know.
Yeah.
Probably more so with Furley. Like, Furley just wants to be included.
Yeah.
Three's Company 2.
So the Furley episode is called Double Trouble?
Yes. It's for season 5, March 24th, 1981. So about 3.5 years after the previous episode.
Okay. So this, after Susan Summers left, is it the season where she was on the telephone or whatever?
I think this might have been part of the... She wasn't at all in this episode.
Yeah.
And she wasn't even mentioned in this episode.
Right.
So I don't think there was a clean break in the transition. It might have been just after that. But yeah, there's a weird transition where Chrissy was not with the others, but she was still a presence. And then her cousin, Cindy, came to kind of fill her spot as a roommate. And by this time, I think she was just gone.
Right.
Because by the end of this season, they would start bringing Terry in as the, to kind of replace Cindy.
Right.
So Cindy was even loopier and goofier than Chrissy, I think.
Yeah. She doesn't seem too bright.
Yeah, like Chrissy is kind of like dumb like a fox sometimes and actually has some very practical... It's almost like a Marilyn Monroe kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where she will actually be the wisest one sometimes, and whereas Cindy, I don't remember her doing too many...
Right.
Cindy just says a lot of spacey things.
Yeah.
So Suzanne Summers is not in this one. Enter Jenna Lee Harrison as Cindy, and Mr. Furley is the landlord now.
Right. So this episode starts with Jack is like using a tape recorder to practice Spanish because a friend of his got a job on a cruise ship, cooking on a cruise ship, basically because he spoke Spanish.
See.
It's kind of a funny bit. Like, he's talking, and then Cindy is, like, in the kitchen, and she's coming out, and he's, like, says, she hears the English part, like, get me a glass of red wine.
Yeah.
So she goes back in, and then comes back out just he's saying something about coffee, and...
Right, so she thinks he's ordering her around.
Yeah. I don't think it quite paid off in I think it pays off later, but it didn't quite pay off in that bit. Yeah. Like, I guess it just... I wanted to see it keep going.
Yeah, it's more one of those like things I was referring to where and Jack just kind of looks puzzled, like he never realizes what that's all. He doesn't understand why Cindy like kind of talks back to him and like gets exasperated with him. He's just like, what is that all about? He doesn't understand it, and then they move on. Yeah, and that kind of points out too one of the big features of the show is like the swinging door to the kitchen. The kitchen, they made great use of that over the years.
Yeah, and I mean so that apartment has like 4 doors, I guess.
Yeah, the 3.
The bathroom?
Yes, 4. The front door, the bathroom, the 2 bedroom doors, and the kitchen door.
Is that 5?
Well, if you count the front door, I guess that'd be 5.
Yeah, I was counting front. Yeah. So 5,
Yeah.
So that's a lot of places for people to be walking in and out of.
Yes.
Which does play into this episode.
Yes. Yes, it does.
And not long after that, he gets called down to Furley's apartment. Furley's niece, Veronica, is there.
Yes.
Daughter of brother Bart.
Yeah.
Who like only appeared in 1 episode, I think.
Yeah, he was often talked about but not seen.
Yeah, he seems like quite the threat.
Yeah, Furley's in constant fear of his brother getting on his case or worse. Right.
And in this scene, because I think we need to note his clothes in each scene.
Right.
He's wearing, I would call it a powder blue jumpsuit.
Yeah,
it's like a one-piece thing.
Yeah.
But with like a wide collar and kind of open, and I think he has one of his usual sort of neckerchief things going on. Like we said, he thinks of himself as this playboy. I don't know. The book talked about his fashion being like 60s fashion. Which I guess maybe. To me, it just seems 70s.
Maybe with some of the colors, but I don't know. It's like the materials seem like 70s.
And the colors seem 70s to me.
Yeah.
Like his apartment has, semi-erotic paintings and like a zebra print pillow and
yeah, it's like a diluted idea of what a bachelor pad should be, like a swinging bachelor pad should look like.
Sort of like blue or purple curtains and definitely not the Roper's apartment. He definitely remodeled.
Yeah.
So anyway, the niece is there and Jack comes down. I think the niece left the room for a minute because he explains to Jack that he thinks she's a spy there to, spy for her dad. She said, she's staying with him because the dad's supposedly out of the country, but he doesn't think the Bart is out of the country. And anyway, he wants. he needs somebody to take her out on the town. So he wants Jack to recommend someone. Because, of course, Jack is gay, and why would she go out on the town with a gay guy?
Right.
But as soon as she shows up, she sees Jack, and she's pretty smitten with him. And then, yeah, they're there, and Furley has to go fix some plumbing. Mm-hmm. Which is pretty cool, because he puts a tool belt on over that ridiculous outfit.
Yeah.
And I don't, just the idea of Don Knotts wearing a tool belt is...
Right.
It just seems like he would fall over.
Yeah.
And she starts making out with Jack right away. Mm-hmm. I hope I'm getting this right. And then Furley kind of comes back, and this basically leads to him saying that was his brother, right?
Well, I think. Well, the whole thing was like Jack, I think Furley told her that she's barking up the wrong tree, basically. Yeah. And Jack said, "Yeah, too bad." And then Jack has the brainstorm, like, "Wait a minute, I know." And
right.
He says, "I forgot my brother was in town." Like, your brother?
That's right.
Like, yeah, my twin brother, my identical twin brother. So Jack was interested in her right in the beginning, and he creates this scenario where he's got a twin brother, so he can have an excuse to go out with her later.
Right.
And that's what he goes gets his twin brother from Texas.
Ooh, yeah, dresses just like him.
Yeah, exactly. Like wears the same identical clothes.
And his name is Austin.
Yeah.
Which was good because he said Austin and then he did a look like
instantly why did I yeah.
And he gets a cowboy hat.
Borrows one of Cindy's old cowboy hats.
Doesn't explain anything to them.
Yeah. Which would have been a good idea.
Right. I guess other things are motivating him.
Yeah, he's basically focused on just getting one great date with Veronica, I guess, and then he'll worry about the rest later.
Yeah. And he puts on a whole character with this Austin.
Yep.
Right.
I say, like all these like colorful like Texas colloquialisms, supposedly.
Yeah. And then he says something in a more Jack voice.
Yeah.
And Furley's like, "Well, you sound like Jack."
Yeah. Like, well, I like to make fun of him. I like to make fun of him sometimes.
Lordy, yeah.
Such a twerp. Oh, he is a twerp,
Yeah.
And Jack kind of gives a look, like, oh.
Right. And that's when Furley leaves, and Veronica, she's not fooled by this. So
yeah.
But she does. They start making out, and then it's the next day.
Yeah, and
clearly they had a good time.
Right.
But Janet and Cindy are worried that the jig is up.
Yeah, they think he jeopardized the whole relationship by doing this, which
I
can see their fear.
Right.
It's a pretty stupid thing to try to get away with.
Yeah.
But
thankfully, Mr. Furley is also stupid.
Yes, that helps many times in the course of this episode.
That is a convenient plot device.
Yeah, him being an idiot.
Yeah. So he shows up and he's like, he starts it off. It sounds like Veronica told me everything.
Yeah.
And they're like afraid.
Yeah.
It's like, God, Austin showed her a great.
Yeah.
And he wants to have like a drink, have a little party.
He's really happy because she was so happy that she's going to tell her dad Bart that he's a great property manager and everything. So,
right. Yeah.
So he considers Austin, to blame for that because he kept her occupied from spying on him and made her so happy that she was just in a good mood and was going to really talk Furley up to Bart. So
yeah.
So he definitely wants to celebrate. He wants to have a party.
Right. So he goes downstairs to get a tray of adult beverages.
Mm-hmm.
And then
because they tried to beg off by saying they didn't have refreshments. Like, oh, that's no problem. I'll take care of everything. And he went down to get the refreshments and bring them back up.
Right. And then they panic. But this is all just leading to the whole crux of this thing.
Yeah.
Which is like a bravura.
Yes.
Comedy set piece.
One of my personal biggest memories of the show is this scene where they're trying to convince Furley that Jack and Austin are at the party at the same time.
Right.
And they do this with a little luck, a little some frantic activity by Jack.
Right. Some of it just involves walking in and out of doors and but so the main thing is Furley sitting on a couch, right? Mm-hmm. Jack is standing behind him.
Yes.
And keeps just switching what shoulder he's behind.
Right, and he's got the cowboy hat in his hand or in his head at any given time.
Yeah.
To distinguish himself.
Right.
So that Furley knows who he's talking to.
Yeah. And he just has to pay attention, Right. Like if Furley was say Jack. And
Yeah.
he switches.
Right here, Mr. Furley.
Right.
Yeah, and then, Austin, you having a good time? Yep, you're having a great time, Furley. You know? And it's entertaining watching it because, like, the whole time you see Jack, like, making faces and they like, what am I going to do next?
Yeah.
And he's like, he's so exasperated the whole time, you know, trying to...
Right, and the girls, too, are like...
Yeah, they're stressed out the whole time.
Yeah.
Like, this is never going to work.
Right. And there was that... Like, when Furley came back with the drinks, the first plan was, like, he was dressed he had the hat on, and he's like, well, I got to go now, catch my flight. And he's like, not in this fog.
Yeah.
Like, fog, and he he opens the door, and it's just like, you know, the fog machine from a Kiss concert.
Yeah, it went haywire.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's totally ridiculous. Like, yeah, because their initial idea was that Jack thought he could get away with it by saying that Austin was going to go out and, you know, catch a flight, and he got called off on business to Texas, whatever that is. And he had to catch the first flight out of there back to Texas in the middle of the night or whatever.
Yeah.
Your police said, you're not going anywhere. So they were stuck, and then they decide needed a little dancing, so they, you know, start dancing, and quick thinking Janet takes Furley.
Yeah.
And kind of like occupies him.
Right.
So that Jack/Austin can dance with Cindy.
Yeah.
And, you know, Furley's kind of focused on Janet. He's got his eyes closed much of the time.
But he keeps, you can cut in any time, Austin.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Jack takes Cindy into the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
And she says something that sparks his next plan.
Yeah, about the... I forget what it is. It basically reminds him of the Spanish thing, but
yeah,
I'm not quite sure I got the direct connection right away either. But
yeah,
it sparks him. He's like, "Oh, Cindy, you're a genius," you know. And
right, and somehow he ends up sending her out, and Furley comes in the kitchen.
Yeah.
So clearly, he told Cindy what to tell Janet. And
right, and then
Janet goes in the bedroom with the tape.
Yeah.
And plays it.
Oh, right. Okay, so the thing is, like, Cindy tells, the conceit is that they tell Furley that Jack's got to study.
Yeah.
So that's how they get Jack in the room, and the excuse is that Jack's got to cram for the test, and for some reason Janet has to help him study.
Right, yeah.
And Furley sort of buys that, you know.
Yeah.
Even though he's disappointed that why would you leave a great party like this, you know.
Yeah, and Jack, as Austin, makes fun of Jack for doing that.
Yeah, exactly. So Janet plays the tape recorder to give the illusion that Jack's in there practicing his Spanish.
Yeah. Then it gets to the part, so the tape recorded when Cindy got mad at Jack.
Yeah. Yeah, so they're...
And Cindy's in the room with Furley and Jack pretending to be Austin.
Right. So she's sitting right there.
Yeah.
When you hear Cindy's voice in the tape.
Right. And
yeah, I think...
And Furley, by the way, is like trashed by now.
Yeah, he's pretty...
Pretty
quickly.
Because he brought up like some... I guess it was, some whiskey or something. And,
yeah.
And we get like Don Knotts drinking a shot of whiskey.
Yeah.
Sputtering and choking. And,
yeah. Which is hilarious.
Yeah. And but he does react. Oh, what? Like Jackson says something about Cindy throwing her voice.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, how'd you learn to throw your voice like that, Cindy?
Yeah. And she doesn't really seem to be following the thing, but
she doesn't like destroy the concept either.
And then you got to do that again.
Yeah.
You got to come see this, Jack.
Yeah.
And then like Janet has to rewind the tape, but they get it, and
the funny thing too is it's one of those classic things where a tape recorder malfunctions, and even like removing the tape from the tape deck doesn't work for the character that's trying frantically like one of those things where for some reason Janet can't just take the tape out of the tape recorder temporarily.
Yeah.
The tape still plays even though she should have just taken it out of the tape player. But you get that shot of her like, tossing and everything up in the air in front of her and scrambling to try to stop this renegade tape deck, I guess.
Yeah. But Furley, he buys that.
Yes. But then, eventually, he says that I think it's like he thinks Jack should come out and see like Cindy and at some point he's just like, well, that's just rude. I can understand, but that's just rude.
Right. Yeah.
He feels snubbed, so he wants to go in and talk some sense into Jack. And they try to stop him, and eventually Jack figures, well, Austin, I'm his brother. I should go in there and be the one to talk to him.
Right.
And that culminates in them having this big fight, where with John Ritter like sticking his head out of the doorway every now and then,
and throwing himself in the door,
and miming having his hair pulled by
with the,
And Austin gets thrown out of the room at one point too. And, puts his hat back on and goes back in there. And Jack says Austin gets crazy when he's drunk.
And Furley gets upset about that.
Yeah, he thinks it's gone a little too far.
Yeah, and he goes in there, and no one's in there.
Yeah. They try to stop him, and they sort of like makes these efforts to stop him, and then just like, and they're all just sitting there with dread because Furley just kind of wanders in there and like decides he's going to do it himself.
Right. And then he just comes out and he apologized.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because they stop him at first like, wait. It's like, I could take care of it. Like, he's got a branding iron. He's like, I'll see you tomorrow. And he turns right around and like starts walking out the door, and then he's like, wait, a branding iron never stopped me before.
Yeah, what
does
like
that
this
total like non sequitur, and then he goes back into the room, and they get away with it again.
Yeah,
they save the day.
I assume him saying that he's just saving face in a way.
Who?
Furley. Like when he comes back out and says he apologized. Yeah, because no one was in there. Because Furley's always trying to pump himself up as a big man.
Mm-hmm.
He's making it seem like to them that he made the crazy Austin apologize.
Right. You don't think...
This is the only way I can rationalize it. Or I
thought that Furley actually was so wasted and clueless that he actually thought that he had a conversation in there with him and convinced him.
I would buy that too.
Yeah. Or that...
Like he saw himself in the mirror or something.
Yeah, or he didn't see Austin, assumed that like Austin was falling down on the ground and decided, well, he apologized and decided to take credit for it.
Yeah, so it could be both of those. Yeah.
But... so what if Jack's schemes had eventually played out? But a whole lot of sweat and hustle to pull this one off.
Yeah.
And the alcohol helped too, I guess.
Yeah.
As clueless as Furley is. There's so many points in this that we didn't even get to all the episodes in the episode where you think that it's exposed, but Furley just interprets something like the opposite way of what a normal person would, and it helps them. So, one of my most memorable episodes, this is the one that came to mind. When I thought, what a fun episode to look at. This is the one that first came to mind because especially the couch scene with Jack putting his head back and forth and just doing the
really
whole Texas
like
thing.
I mean, for all of them, it's just like all of those actors have to make it work.
Yeah.
Not just the two clowns in the middle of it, but or three clowns if you count Austin.
Yeah,
but
that's right.
That really worked. I was impressed by that.
Yeah. And it's funny. I mean,
I'm
going to say it. I like the show. It's a funny episode, and I enjoy watching the show. Like, of course, it's totally like unrealistic in some points. It's over the top farce, like you say, but
sure,
it holds up. I find it very entertaining. I think it's hilarious.
Yeah.
And very well acted. Everybody does their role pretty well. And to get to like the whole Roper versus Furley thing, everything Furley does is funny. Like when Furley's upset, it's funny. When Furley's clueless, it's funny. And Furley, a lot of times when he sort of gets taken down a peg and he just has to look sort of chastened, that's really funny. That's one of my favorite scenes when he's just like, and is sort of sheepish about something. That's funny. When he's afraid of his brother Bart, he's funny.
Right.
Just Don Knotts is great. I mean, you can just watch Don Knotts, and it's going to be funny.
Yeah. And he's doing, I mean, I guess it's similar to Barney in a totally different context.
Yeah,
But, I mean, he's not as likable. Like, Barney Fife is an essentially likable character. He's just sort of Barney. I don't know.
Yeah, he sort of puffs himself up a little bit.
Yeah.
And especially with, like, Furley, he's not, I wouldn't consider him mean. Sometimes he's a little, he's got an edge to him, but it's more, they're not so much afraid of Furley, they're afraid of the situation.
Right.
Like of losing their spot. But Furley himself is just somebody that they just got to deal with. And actually, I think they realize, like, Furley actually wants to hang out with them, and he's more of a pathetic figure than, like, Roper is. He's just kind of, like, he's pitiful. And I think they kind of, like, and eventually he sort of becomes one of them. And actually, if you notice, like, one thing we haven't talked about is the theme song and, like, the opening sequence. Like, the ones they shot for, like, the Furley years, Furley's sort of hanging out with them, like, at the shots of him, like, at the amusement park.
Yeah.
He's more like one of the gang, whereas the Ropers were more like apart from them. Where Furley was more like a sidekick, like he would do stuff with them. Like, he would be more directly involved in a lot of their plot lines, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Whereas the Ropers were sort of just more older, like sort of more clearly next generation, where Furley was trying to fit in with their generation a little bit more.
Right. Yeah. We didn't talk about what he was wearing in that other scene, but I don't quite remember.
Some kind of ascot, no doubt.
His ascot, I feel like it was one of his sort of like jungle explorer outfits.
Yeah.
Isn't that, like, at some point when he was on, didn't the credits feature him like in a, I just remember him like popping up from behind a plant.
Yeah.
Like a pith helmet on or something.
He
Probably didn't have the helmet on.
Yeah.
I don't know. I enjoyed it way more than I thought I would. So now, Don Knotts has one of his signature ticks or bits is the sniff.
The snort, yeah.
Do you think?
Uh-oh, here we go.
In the context of the times,
Yes.
do you think that sniff indicated anything about Furley?
I can't believe I'm ashamed that I haven't thought about that until this point. This is one of the reasons we do the show, folks, to explore the real issues behind these shows.
Right.
I never really thought that before, but now that you mention it,
Might explain even more of his behavior.
it might, actually. I could totally imagine Furley's the kind of guy I can see, like, trying that and just bringing it home and, like, doing, like, a Woody Allen and, like, sneezing and, like, blowing it all over the apartment, you know?
Right.
And then trying to pick it back up. So I didn't really think that. Go figure, like, as a 6 or 7 year old, I wasn't thinking of Furley's extracurricular substance
But
activities.
Yeah, I think it would be like you just said, because I mean, we saw him try to drink whiskey and he couldn't handle that.
Yeah, I don't think he could handle it.
But I could see him maybe like seeing other cool people doing that.
Yeah.
Like just the sniffing part.
Right.
And assuming that.
Right. That it was
That's a cool thing.
or not knowing what it was associated with.
Yeah.
And just thinking that people were doing it to be cool. Not,
Right,
Not,
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he's definitely the kind that would be like the honeymooner, like Ralph and Ed getting drunk on grape juice because they think it's, or like having oregano and thinking it was something, that
Right.
instantly being knocked out from that. But,
Yeah.
considering the era and you wonder what was going on at the Regal Beagle, like in those in the restroom at the Regal
Yeah.
Beagle. There might have been some transactions going on.
I bet some of those bartenders had
Oh,
extra. A little side action going on there.
Yeah, that's probably true. It's they didn't really get into that in the show, but
No.
I think that's one aspect where the roommates were very very conservative,
Yeah.
and probably Mr. Furley as well.
Okay.
He'd be probably terrified that Bart would find out. Is what
Well,
I'm
that's
thinking.
yeah. He did.
He wouldn't dare risk it.
But then again, he was very paranoid, so something might have been causing.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know.
You make some good points.
Yeah.
You make some good points. I could see him maybe getting a little snuff every now and then and trying that.
Right.
Put hair on your chest, but I don't know. So
Now I want to see Don Knotts playing a guy like chewing tobacco.
yeah, see, pretty much envisioning Don Knotts doing anything, you can see like a comic potential for it.
Yeah.
What do you think, Furley or the Ropers? If you had to pick, I think
geez.
Furley just brings something. I love, as much as I love the Roper character.
Yeah.
Like just seeing a scene with Stanley and Helen. And unless it's Roper like looking at the camera and smiling, it's not as good as like just a scene with Don Knotts. I think he can make any scene funny by himself.
Yeah.
So I kind of like the Furley character better, and I'm surprised to hear myself say that.
Yeah, and I think like you were saying, he's more integrated into the stories, whereas the Ropers are sort of not. I mean, they're
the Ropers aren't
their
as
own
aggressively
thing.
dumb as Furley is.
No.
So there was only so much you could do. Like you couldn't do that kind of thing. Yeah, you could do some of that with Roper, but not to the extent with.
So that could be an argument in terms of quality that maybe they're because they weren't as aggressively dumb.
Yeah.
That it made the writers have to work harder.
Yeah.
But if they're not more directly involved in the stories, then that's still not an issue.
Yeah.
If they're just doing their own thing, it's just like, okay, we just got to make sure Jack pretends to be gay, which he didn't really do anything other than, like, he's not. That's another. He's never like, playing some stereotype or something.
Only when he's like directly feels he has to, or if somebody directly asks him to do something, he'll do like a little gesture or like just kind of speak a little bit higher. But in general, he doesn't really change anything.
Yeah.
He's quick to react though if he thinks he has to, and he'll kind of
Yeah. Yeah, based on this episode, and I also had watched the first Furley episode, which also involved them getting him drunk. Like, intentionally getting him drunk.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't pay the rent, and they're trying to pawn off. They're trying to pawn him off on the Lana character.
Yes.
Because he was hot to trot for her.
Yeah, Lana, the
40-ish.
Was she a widower?
Yeah,
I don't know, but she was an older woman than the roommate with a voracious appetite, I'll say.
Yeah, especially for Jack.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, she definitely had a thing for Jack.
Yeah, which came into play in that somehow. Like, she showed up trying to hit on him,
Yeah.
and they had also, like, to make the rent, they had a garage sale of stuff in the Roper's garage, which turned out to be all of Furley stuff. They didn't know about Furley yet, so. And, like, they had some stuff there's like a lamp, like a weird, like a, lamp with like a hula girl or something. Mm-hmm. And he was going to buy it from them because he had one and they're hard to find. He wanted a pair. And it was his lamp.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
I could see that.
But that's how they figured out they had sold most of his stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then the idea was like, they were going to get him with Lana, and that would be their payment for the rent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Pimp her out.
Right. Yeah, Lana was a regular for a while, and again, not in this episode. And
yeah, she's probably gone by then.
Yeah. I actually think the Furley episodes in general are as good, if not better. And part of it is because my favorite blonde roommate is actually Terry,
yeah.
Priscilla Barnes, who isn't in this episode either, and she might be, kind of play second fiddle to the other ones. And actually, again, in the book, they kind of make the point that I think there's the feeling that the writers never really got a handle on her character. She was a nurse,
yeah,
and that she wasn't as distinctive. But I remember I was thinking that I kind of liked that because she seemed like a real person because she wasn't dumb, and it was kind of refreshing to have like an actual kind of. She was goofy. She was kind of unlucky and like maybe klutzy sometimes, and like she'd have these romantic mishaps. But she wasn't like a dumb blonde, and it was actually kind of nice to have like sort of regular people interacting with Jack.
Yeah.
So I liked her a lot.
Yeah.
And so I now when the show really when they started focusing on Jack and his restaurant and kind of tapering off near the end, and actually I think it lasted 8 seasons. And I think at the 8th season it fell pretty dramatically in the ratings, and I don't know if there was a time slot thing or something, but the show was definitely losing it by then.
Yeah.
And that's when they sort of gradually they brought in some other characters, and Jack started his own restaurant in the Three's a Crowd spinoff, which I just did not really care for that at all. The show did lose some steam. I mean, I'm not saying they're all gems, but it had a pretty good run with, how many 200 some episodes.
Yeah,
that's pretty impressive.
Hefty duty book there.
Yeah, it's
like from a real publisher too.
It warrants a book length treatment, in my opinion, and pretty much everything you'd want to know about Three's Company is in here. We didn't get into the whole Suzanne Summers thing, and there was some bad blood between her and the castmates in the show, and there's different theories about her husband was kind of a stage manager and engineered that, and she wanted more money. But I think John Ritter and Joyce DeWitt kind of resented and felt like she was attacking them by demanding to get more money than them. So I think there was some bad blood for years, and it didn't end smoothly. But and I'll say too, going back and watching some of the early episodes, Suzanne Summers is very talented. I mean, you can see why she, would be a big star.
Yeah.
And not just because, being physically attractive. It just seems like she had some comic talent.
Yeah.
Now, the theme song, let's talk about the theme song and the credit opening. They had multiple sequences over the years. Again, everything you'd want because I love shows where they introduce the characters, they have their names, but they look at the camera and do like goofy faces, or they're in weird situations.
Yeah.
And then they just like, oh, ha, 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 that kind of thing. And that's all over Three's Company.
Right.
One of the classic series of sitcom openings.
Yeah.
Just from the beginning, like in the early years when you had Jack like leering at women and, falling off his bike or whatever.
Right.
Janet accidentally pouring water on, sunbathing Chrissy, and Chrissy just looking at the camera like, oh man, this happened again. And
those are all sequences filmed just for the opening, right?
Yes.
Definitely the Furley one was definitely all
Right.
a thing.
Yeah, that's the sort of thing I like. And so then they shot like an amusement park. They did, and then they went to a zoo for like the later years. And the zoo ones are really cool, I think.
Yeah.
Like they have, like just interacting with animals and
Right.
and they get Larry in there and Mr. Furley. I mean, these are just great like opening sequences, I think.
Yeah.
And another thing I like is a lot of times they'll end up with Jack, like with the roommates, and it shows Jack and the roommates having fun, like as friends, and they'll have their arms around each other, but it kind of shows that they've got like a platonic relationship,
Yeah.
and establishes that they're friends, and that's. I know I wanted to talk about the theme song, but I just want to point out before I forget that one thing I like about the show is I think, seeing some episodes lately, it emphasizes that they really care about each other.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are times where Jack will make jokes about wanting to be with one of the women, but it's really they care about each other. And I remember like there's a lot of episodes where Jack, especially with Janet, because they had like that bond from being together, they really look out for each other.
Yeah.
They'll tease each other and kind of get each other in trouble sometimes, but ultimately they're always looking out for each other. I think that's a big theme in the show. And even like Furley sort of becomes a friend of theirs, and they sort of feel protective for him, and like vice versa. And it's just the show's a lot more grounded than you think. I mean, there's like these real relationships between these people, and they sort of look at each other. And I think that's what makes it holds up well, is they actually seem like friends, even if they think they're doing dumb things. You feel that they like each other, and they're not just making zingers with each other. I mean, they live together, but they like each other. It's not like they're forced to like each other. They actually do like each other, and that's also reflected well in those opening sequences that just kind of like establish them all as like a gang hanging out.
Yeah, and the theme song. I mean, the theme song is awfully catchy.
It is, and it's
Co-written by the guy who wrote a lot of Sesame Street songs.
yes,
Which are
it's
usually
not
catchy.
easy being green, I guess.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
I don't know if he just did I think he just did the music maybe for this one.
Yes. Yeah, and now the singing always strikes me as like incredibly precious.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if it was supposed to be a farce or just the singing style, but it's
Right.
like, come and knock on our door. It's just so cheesy.
Yeah. I do think it should have been 3 people singing it,
Yes,
but it's a duet.
that's a good point, and it kind of deflates me a little bit because I thought it was one of the best theme songs in TV history, and now you're making me reconsider it. There's maybe a
it's a lot of
tragic
fun.
flaw in there,
Yeah.
but yeah.
I think just if you were to be true to the concept of the show, but the song is not directly about the show either. Well, no, it is kind of because that
Where the
thing is
kisses are
quoted.
hers and his.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, or it's about other things.
Take a step that is new. It just like this. The singing doesn't mesh well with the. It just.
Yeah.
It's just. It entertains me. Just the singing style itself just cracks me up. And I guess one of the singers is one of the credited musicians is Ray Charles, of course.
Right.
Of course, the legendary. I love modern sounds and country western music is probably my favorite Ray Charles album, but he outdoes himself on Three's Company, does he not?
Yeah.
Maybe it's not the same Ray Charles.
His crooner stage.
Yeah. But whoever's doing it, I mean, it's classic. It cracks me up. It's like that kind of. It's just like kind of like when you get those Christmas albums you imagine like in the 1960s, or just albums that they would play like like grown-ups at a cocktail party or something like that in the 60s, trying to be sprightly,
Yeah.
or something like that, singing it. So it makes me smile, like
Yeah.
the whole show. Three's Company makes me smile. It makes me laugh, and I won't apologize for that, Mike.
I don't think you need to.
So I give Furley the edge over the Ropers
I think so.
in this battle. Jack is my favorite of the roommates, but much love for Janet, and Terry is my favorite of the blonde roommates.
Okay. You know what spinoff I would have liked to see?
What's that?
Not just Larry, but Larry and Furley.
Larry and Furley?
Yeah. On the road or something.
Yeah.
Not solving crimes, that's a cliche, but just...
Yes, because we definitely would want to avoid cliches with anything
Yeah.
associated with Three's Company.
Right.
But
Some kind of adventure.
yeah.
Trying to, on the road, like The Incredible Hulk or The Fugitive or whatever, but just trying to score with different guest star women every week.
Maybe they could be like some kind of thing. Maybe they have like a treasure map or something that they find, and they go off cross country, and for some reason they have to take an RV, and there's different, like a scavenger hunt kind of thing. Mm-hmm. That was kind of big back then, right? Like cross country events, and
Sure.
there'd be some kind of like faddish like scavenger hunt, and they'd partner up in it. So they'd
Yeah.
go across the country, and of course they'd have to stop in different towns, like you say, like they have an RV, and there'd be all complications and
very decked out.
Yeah, they'd having fights over who gets dibs on the RV, that night, and who has to get a hotel room.
Plus, you get scenes of Don Knotts trying to drive an RV.
Yeah.
Giant steering wheel.
Yeah.
Whoa!
They could have all kinds of scenarios. They go like hanging out in diners and discos and I would definitely
showing what single life is all across the country.
Yeah. Single in America, something like that.
With Larry and Ralph.
Yeah, Ralph Furley. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's my only regret is that there wasn't more Larry in these episodes.
Yeah.
But he's one of the greats for sure. And I would pay to see that spinoff. I would pay to see it.
Three's Company 2.
This episode brought to you by the Regal Beagle. This episode also brought to you by Mr. Furley's brother Bart. This episode also brought to you by IKEA. Join us next time for another exciting episode of Battle of the Network Shows. Learn more, leave feedback, and suggest future episodes at battleofthenetworkshows.com. Follow us on Twitter at BatNetShows, and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/battleofthenetworkshows.
You know, you're lucky, Jack. You could be pals with women. I mean, you don't have the same problems that a regular man has.
Like what?
Well, you'll never have a wife nagging you. Not that I have anything against marriage, but wives can be very demanding. You know, they're always asking you to do things.
What kind of things?
You know, like things. Things.
Like?
Like
putting up a shelf?
That's it. Putting up shelves, that's it. And they're never satisfied. I mean, it's not as though I never put up a shelf. But, I mean, maybe I don't put up as many shelves as some husbands, but... I put up shelves.
I'm sure you do.
If Helen had her way, I'd be putting up a shelf every night.
It's a lot of shelves.